Hello, I am Mukesh Singh. I am an illustrator working in the medium of comics, concept art. During this set of videos, we are going to develop a typical comic book splash page involving multiple figures. This image features a battle scene between everybody's favorite X-Man, Wolverine, and the Ninjas of the Hand. These ninjas, they are a secret group of evil involved in criminal activities and other mercenary missions. Now, splash pages. Splash pages are usually the so-called money shots, images which are designed for the wow factor, usually in visual mediums like movies, games, and of course comics. Invariably, in such type of pages, we see some kind of reveal of some preceding event, like let's say a suspense sequence, or it can be a big reveal of a spectacular imagery from a sci-fi or a fantasy setting. For example, let's build up some kind of backstory for our image here. In our imaginary comic book, we can have a series of panels depicting the ninjas in a group. They are swarming on some location. They are on the hunt for something, and after a search, they find Wolverine, and they have a brief scuffle, and they manage to subdue him. But maybe our hero is just biding his time. We can show one panel towards the end of the page with a close-up of Wolverine's face, tightened up, coiled up with energy, and at some opportune moment he leaps and catches one of the ninjas with his claws, thus providing release to that build-up which we had in the previous panels. This image could be that reveal, that splash page. Comics have this unique way of depicting time. In fact, many still images do it as well. This is something I like to call simultaneous time. Simultaneous time is basically events happening in parallel in one single frame. If you have ever looked at a mural or an old painting, or even a drawing on a comic book page, say a Mort Drucker drawing in Mad Magazine, where we see various characters talking in groups or doing things that seem like they are happening at the same time, but all of them are happening in a single frame. What you're doing is you're looking at simultaneous time. In motion-based mediums like films, animations, games, it is not possible, or let's say highly impractical, to show multiple events in parallel. Due to their nature, which is essentially narrating a story in motion, they are limited by our ability to focus, to assimilate many events at the same time. In such mediums, usually one thing dominates our attention. On the other hand, images, and by extension comics, they are still. They do not move. This gives us a nice advantage. We can deliver information about multiple events at one go in one single frame. An image of an action sequence like this can depict many events in parallel without too much fuss. If the reader turns her gaze elsewhere in the picture, we need not worry that she might miss something vital. When she looks back at what she was looking at before, that event is still there, as are all the others we have planted. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. I always draw Wolverine first, since he's the hero figure, and I work out the relative positions of the ninjas around him. I'm drawing the layout over a rough layer. The image has been flipped. Mirroring a drawing this way, it's useful to check the composition, whether it's working well. We can look out for awkward elements in the layout. It also helps us look at the drawing with a fresh eye. Because dealing with the same image over a long period of time creates familiarity with it, and it is easy to have mistakes slip in without us realizing it. I'm drawing the figure of Wolverine with full anatomy, um, even though we are going to show him in costume. Drawing his figure this way will help to visualize the folds, the creases of his costume, as well as other design elements. Uh, of course, we can go overboard and do that for the rest of the figures in the composition, like the ninjas. But I think it will be overkill, consume too much time. Um, Besides, they are wearing loose fitting clothes, ninja costumes. So only the major bony structure is important for us to understand how their costumes will react to their underlying figures. I'm drawing some lines following the curvature of his torso and limbs. This will help me to visualize the three-dimensional nature of the pose when I'm working on the final pencils. After Wolverine, I think the second most important figure is this one, this ninja getting snitted. Uh, I show his body going limp as Wolverine delivers the fatal blow. Uh, so I'm just working out the position of his figure in relation to Wolverine. This guy, um, he is wrapping himself around Wolverine's legs, doing his best to cover them. Um, when I had made the initial sketch of Wolverine, I had drawn him fully, including his legs, but I felt that this killed the impact of his pose. So I thought of using some one of the ninjas to cover them. This one volunteered to do the job. It seems like he's taking it all a little too seriously, but you can't fault him. He's doing his job. Let's think of the ninjas as models posing for the drawing. We tell them, you do this, you do that. One of you pose this way, the other pose that way. Um, I realize that his drawing is killing the action line, which moves from the bottom left to bottom right. Of course, this is a mirror canvas, so here we see it in the opposite direction. Uh, Anything that goes against the main action line will draw attention to itself. His figure is almost horizontal here, but and also all of the ninjas will have the same color for the costume, which is red. So his figure will blend in with the rest, and he may not stick out as much. But I plan to come up with a better solution. maybe he will come up with a better solution himself. Whenever I start with a new figure, I draw the heads first. I use the heads as a unit of measurement to make sure that all the figures at a similar distance from the reader, they are of the same size. Um, I'm arranging some of these ninjas like the fingers of a hand. It's a simple visual pun that is not obvious when we look at the image. If the viewer gets it, it's fine. If not, it's fine too. It's not vital to the composition. Refine the sketches further, adding some more detail to the costumes, the folds of the costume. I add the background. uh, the structure also follows the line of action. This helps to reinforce that idea, the concept. I'm adding some characters in the background as well. I draw two of the ninjas together here. Their pose is basically one action in two. Because they have similar costumes, it seems that we are drawing only one character, but we are drawing that character twice, showing him at two different stages of the leap. Uh, the one on the right here is coiled to make the jump, while the one behind him to the left, he's already in the middle of the action. It's an interesting way to show motion. Adding some details to the backgrounds. I refine the drawings now, adding some sense of volume. Even though I won't be using them when I'm working on the pencils, basically what I'm doing here is writing a visual note to myself for the future when I'll be working on the colors. Uh, this way, I'm working out the shadow, working out the light portions of the figures. So we finally changed the pose here. We discuss the matter. I tell him this is not working. So maybe he goes away for a while and comes back and says, hey, what if I'm standing up like the rest? I give him a thumbs up sign. I say, yeah, that's a good idea, do it. And he immediately goes off and obliges us. Probably he's a new recruit. He wants to show that he can match the rest of the ninjas. He's very enthusiastic. Maybe he wants to show his boss that he has got what it takes to be a true ninja of the hand. Or maybe the ninja getting snicked by Wolverine as his friend, or even his brother. So maybe this one he has some extra motivation to stop Wolverine. Just adding some chains. They help draw attention towards Wolverine. All of the ninjas are also looking towards him, so they help to maintain Wolverine as the focus of the image. I'm virtually done now with the layouts. I think we can move on to the pencil stage. Here's the final finished version. I'll see you in the next video. Well, here we are in the penciling and inking stage. I call this the pencil ink stage. Since I'm working digitally, I end up treating pencils like inks and vice versa. I may go and correct some of the drawings, add something, remove something. I will not be doing much talking in this video because I have covered most of my thinking of the process in the layout video. This is just me enjoying the process. This is the most fun part of the workflow. All of the thinking part has been done, the problems have been sorted out. This is just a case of building up and refining on what I've already done in the layout stage. I'm just enjoying myself. If I had done this traditionally, the way a comic artwork is normally produced, I would have split the finishing of the drawing into two, pencils and inks. Since working digitally allows you to merge these two separate disciplines. This is mainly to save time more than anything else. The feel of the ink on paper, the way the paper and pen react to each other as you apply the inks. I think there are only a few things which give as much satisfaction. If you have ever handled a brush or ink, then brush or a pen rather, to ink, you will know what I'm talking about. Ink has a language all of its own. Earlier in the 70s and 80s, the inkers working in comics, many of them were called finishers because that's essentially what they were doing, finishing the artwork. Most of the pencilers would develop rough pencils which the inker would then go over and complete. They would add all the finishing touches, add elements like mass, depth, shadow, weight. Inking was developed as a process for better printing because most of the pulp comics produced in the US in the 50s and 50s to the 80s rather, they were printed on low quality, cheap mass market paper. These type of printing, they were not able to reproduce the fine lines of pencils, And so inking as a stage, as a step in the comic book development process, was adopted mainly as a solution. But as with many art techniques that were developed as a means to an end, inking evolved a language all of its own. There are many famous penciler inker combinations that have ever graced the pages of American comics. One of my most favorite ones is the team of John Buscema and Alfredo Alcala. Alfredo Alcala was a Filipino artist, if I'm not mistaken. He was a fantastic artist, phenomenal skills with the brush. He was capable of producing a complete comic book on his own. So it is significant that he chose at times to ink other pencilers' work. His skill level was so highly developed that he was often brought on to finish a penciler's work. His drawing was sort of weak. But this was not the case with John Buscema. John Buscema was a fantastic artist. Combined with Alcala's phenomenal draftsman skills and Buscema's dynamic, lively layouts and action, together they produced some of the finest art in comics. I love their collaborations. Another legendary inker who is very much alive in the medium, Klaus Janson. He can draw, he can ink. I would love to see his inks grace my pencils. So yeah, Klaus Janson. And who else? Scott Williams. Everybody knows Scott Williams. His inks and Jim Lee's pencils are inseparable. He's a fantastic inker. And there is another inker whose work I like, Tim Townsend. Yeah. Whenever I come across a comic book featuring a collaboration between Chris Bacalo's pencils and Tim Townsend inks, I always pick it up. He's also done some really nice collaboration with Joe Madureira. I hope I'm pronouncing the names right. Another inker I like is Terry Austin. He was quite the rage back in the 70s and 80s. I really liked his inks over John Byrne's pencils. He has a very detailed style of inking, which suits artists like John Byrne very well. Another legendary name, Kevin Nolan. Complete artist. When I say complete artist, I mean a complete comic book artist. Somebody who can tell a story through his drawings. And I think that's why they have been so successful, purely on the strength of their inking alone. It is always a safe bet that if any of these artists were working on your pencils, the result would always be terrific. In fact, if I ever had the privilege of any one of them inking my work, I would never pencil my artworks in such a detailed level. It would be a fusion of their thinking, their artistic sense and experience combined with my pencils. That would be a dream work. Another inker I like, somebody who is not known for his inking. He is more famous for bringing his unique vision to famous characters like Spider-Man, the Hulk. He has produced a significant number of comic books as an inker. I'm talking about Todd McFarlane. Now, his inks and Greg Capullo's pencils were a terrific combination. They were a very successful team of penciler inker working in the late 90s and early 2000s superhero comics. He brought a nice gritty sense to Capullo's pencils and X Factor. Speaking of X Factor, I think I had seen Greg Capullo's work in a title by the very same name, an X Factor book in one of the X-Men lines in the 90s. Now, back then in the 90s, almost every X-Men artist, every new X-Men artist was working in the mold of Jim Lee. I found that Greg Capullo's work is nice, but it's like Jim Lee's, sort of similar, I would say. But unlike a lot of the other artists working in the medium, in the title back then, his work was a lot more solid, a lot more compact. It had a sense of bona fide regular draftsmanship feel to it. But when I saw his work in Spawn, especially the ones inked by Todd McFarlane, it was a revelation. If you are looking for an inker for Capullo's pencils, Todd McFarlane's name would not be the first one you would think of, but it was amazing. In fact, it's a very good example of two different artistic styles coming together and creating a third one, a new one. They complemented each other very well. Another name that one does not think of when one is talking about inkers is Mike Mignola. I'm not sure whether he has inked a lot of other pencilers' work, but if you look to study simple and bold divisions of light and shadow, you would do well to have a look at his art. I always look forward to them. He brings a certain mood, a certain personality to his work, which I really admire. One of the contemporary artists working in comics is I like his work is Dan Panosian, and just like many of the artists in the 90s who were working on the X-Men titles, his style back then borrowed very heavily from the Jim Lee style, but in the last few years I've seen his work, and it evokes, it's different, it evokes a lot of the classic comic book artists from the 50s, 60s, 70s. Speaking of classic, here's another legendary artist who, like Alcala, was phenomenal. I'm talking about the great Al Williamson. If you've seen any old Flash Gordon work, you will have seen Al Williamson's Sublime Ink work. It's a treat to see them. It's almost criminal that his work was ever colored. They were so beautiful, so complete when seen in pure black and white. Some of the other classic artists who were fantastic inkers, though I don't think they ever inked on other people's pencils. They inked mostly their own stuff. I'm talking about people like Alex Toth, Alex Raymond. Another contemporary artist who is doing some great work inking his own pencils is Sean Gordon Murphy. His inking evokes a sense of Klaus Janson, but his style is completely his own. In fact, when I look at his work and Dan Panosian's work, I often wonder, if they will ever collaborate with other pencilers. It would be nice to see an unlikely penciler team up with their inks. It might be interesting. Because the pencils, for various reasons, are so detailed nowadays, so complete, that there is not much scope for inkers to bring their own aesthetics to the table, which is a shame, because as such, many inkers aren't used to do nowadays. I'm talking about many inkers aren't used to doing a significant portion of the art as true collaborators. We are missing one whole level of aesthetics here. And I think this position of an inker as one half of the artist combination is unique to comics, American comics especially. European artists have mostly done the entire work on their own. And speaking of European artists, Moebius. Need I say more? He could have been a legend purely on the strength of his inking alone. Wow. Who else? There are a few artists in American comics who finished their own work. Someone like Travis Sherry. His work is lovely. It's out of this world. He makes some really extremely finished pieces. But also like a lot of his other rougher work. The scratchy inking style that he brings to some of his pieces. He's not trying to replicate his finished color ones, which are fantastic. I mean, I love them. But he's allowing, when he's doing his rough works, he's allowing the medium of inks to speak their own language, which is nice. There are still a lot of veterans and masters working in the mediums. Speaking of masters, here's another one, Jerry Ordway. His name is often never invoked as an inker, but again, like Klaus Janson, Alcala, Kevin Nolan, Al Williamson, he can ink. He's a complete artist. He's a complete comic book creator, I would say. He writes, he pencils, he draws. In fact, I think he's one of the most complete creators to have ever worked in the medium. I loved his Superman work, especially some of the work that he did for the title in the middle stages. I found that he was creating only a few pages in some of those issues, the period in between. And I came to know much later that he was working on an adaptation of the Tim Burton's Batman comic book. So during this stage, his Superman work was a lot more looser, and I think perhaps due to a need for speeding it up, deadline issues, or for any other reason, his inking became a lot more freer. It became more flowing. It had it had all the correctness of form, all of its charm. But in fact, his work from this period is one of my most favorite ones. I wish to see him ink like this again. Uh, Not that he's not doing some fantastic work right now. I mean, he draws amazingly well. But his inks during that period, those few issues of Superman, they had a charm. They had a flow, a lovely brush quality feel to it. He's one of my most favorite artists, comic book artists. When he took on Superman, I'm sort of embarrassed to admit, but I did not miss Kurt Swan, and that's saying something because, for all intents and purposes, Kurt Swan is the definitive Superman artist, at least in my book. So I hope you enjoyed my little fan session here. But I also hope that if you're not familiar with some of the names that I mentioned, I think you should check them out. All of them are fantastic artists. They're worth studying, especially if you want to know more about the medium of comics, the inking part of the medium of comics. Okay, so I'll see you in the next one when we go to colors. Cheers. So finally we are at the coloring stage. Now what I've done is I have selected portions of the image, basically the ninja figures. I've saved them as alphas in the alpha channel, and I'm selecting them one by one, adding a new layer, and using this alpha channels as masks for the layers. This is just a way of preparing the artwork for coloring. Having pre-selected layers like this is useful also towards the end, when I'm going to sit down and do a bit of color corrections to prepare the artwork for print. I added some flat colors in the background, basically red, since the majority of the figures in this image, they are the ninja and their costume color is red. I decided that I'll use it as the base of my painting. This would also help Wolverine stand out because his costume colors are different, blue and yellow. Right now what I'm doing is using a large grungy brush, just adding colors in the background in the overall image. Think of it as doing a bit of underpainting for your watercolors, acrylics, etc. I start with Wolverine once again, just laying on some basic flesh tones, just trying to bring out the forms. When I'm doing this bit of underpaintings, what I usually do is press Command Y, or if you're on the PC it's Control Y. What it does is it turns on the soft proof preview. It's a good way of having a basic information about how the colors will look in print. I sometimes switch them on and off just to see what the original colors look like. On my monitor they look pretty washed out, especially the blacks. It's a pretty old one. The colors are not as accurate as I would like them to be. I start laying out the basic colors for his costume. I usually tend to put down the colors in layers. I use a pretty standard Photoshop brush. It's called the pencil brush, I think. I set it to about anywhere between 30 to 40% opacity. Make sure that the pressure settings are on, and then I start layering in the colors step by step. This allows me to build the colors on the canvas itself without having to mix them. The default Photoshop brush engine does not allow mixing of colors, so it can become a little painful after a while to mix two different colors to arrive at the one that you want. So I sort of mimicked my my acrylic painting style, which I used to do back when I was in college, and I started using them as a template for doing my colors in Photoshop. Just like acrylic, just like Photoshop, I would say, acrylic colors, the default behavior is that the colors dry very fast compared to oils and watercolors. So you have to work fast if you want to blend in colors, and after a layer of paint has dried, any new application that you add on top, it does not blend in with the previous colors. So you develop a technique where you end up layering the colors in thin washes so that the underlying color shows through Here again, I'm just marking out the midtones and basically marking out the areas which are away from the light. I quickly go over the layers one by one. Now I move on to adding some highlights, basically marking out the areas of the figures which are facing the light. We are back to Wolverine, refining the contours of the face, body, bumping up the lid portions of his face, and looking at the angle of the light and the ninja blocking him. Part of his face and body should be in shadow, but since he's the main central figure, I take a bit of artistic license and decide to ignore that. I am deepening the shadow areas of his figure now, as well as bumping up the light portion of his costume. We can see already that the colors of his costume are beginning to jump out of the overall color schemes that we have chosen for this, which is essentially red. Adding some highlights. It's time to do the same for this ninja. Basically, bring the level of finish to his figure on the same level as Wolverine's. I'll use him as a template for coloring the other ninjas. I'll start working out the details of the folds in his costume. I'm using the same shade of blue of Wolverine's costume in some of the gears and other portions of the ninja's costume. This is a nice way of trying to bring some kind of balance to the color scheme. This will also help us avoid making Wolverine stand out too much like a cutout. I'm doing something of a back and forth between Wolverine and this ninja. Each new information level that I add to either one of these two figures, I go back and try and match that to the other one. working on the background now, using the same technique as I had done for Wolverine and the Snake-Tip Ninja. I went over each figure and finished them to about 70 to 80%. Once again, I am laying out the colors in transparent washes, in transparent layers, building up the colors slowly. The background figures will have much less detail than the foreground ones, obviously. The highlights and the lit portion of these figures in the background will not be as strong as the ones in the foreground. Now I'll finally start completing each of the figures one by one. Adding shadows to the part of the body which is furthest away from the light, and making the side facing the light much lighter. I decide I don't like the normal flesh color for the ninjas, so I decide to add some grayish blue. It makes them look more supernatural. If you notice, none of the characters have eyeballs. This is a very unique thing that I've seen in comics mostly. Um, it's a graphic device. Some of the superheroes, like really old ones like Phantom, then much later Batman, Spider-Man, Green Lantern, all of them wear masks. The slits, as they're called, it seems to add some kind of aura, some mystery to the characters. So while initially I had planned to add the eyeballs during the sketching stage, I thought the ninjas and even Wolverine would look much cooler without them. The ninja's eyes are red. Maybe they have drunk on some kind of potion which enhances their abilities, which enhances their fearlessness. And the effect of the potion is that their eyes turn red. Some kind of story that you build up to add some logic. Much of what will happen next in terms of my process is just refining the figures one by one, deepening the shadows, enhancing the lights, getting some characters to the folds of the cloth. I start finishing the ancillary elements in the painting, like the chain. Adding yellow highlights to the areas which are facing the main light, and blue midtones for the ones which are in shadow. I start adding some blood to Wolverine to make him look more violent, and also to indicate that some kind of fight has happened previously. And this, along with the tear in the costume, probably helps the story that we built up during the layout stage. start refining the background ninjas, going over them very loosely. Doing some touch-ups to the background here and there, adding some texture. So here's the finished piece. I hope you enjoyed this little workshop. I had a lot of fun creating it, and I hope that you were able to take something away from this. I look forward to hearing some feedback. That's all for now. Thank you for your time. Cheers.